So, hi year 10s, we're going to move on to language paper 2, question 2. So this is two texts about two locations, Aberfan and, I hope I'm saying that right, and London, and the kind of natural disasters, man-made disasters, you could also say, that have happened in those places. So the first question that we're going to look at is question 2, of course. It says you need to refer to source A and B for this question, so you need to look at both texts. It's not about just looking at a specific part, but having an overall idea about the writer's message and what the writer's main ideas are. So then it goes on to say both sources give details about the places where the events occur. So the important thing is about looking at what the focus is of the question. What are you going to have to compare? Okay, it's the places, the locations, not about maybe the disaster or anything else, about the places. What do we learn about them? And it says use details from both sources to write a summary of the differences between Aberfan and London. So here you need to use details, which is of course examples, which are information from both texts that we can pick out, and we need to write a summary. Okay, so the summary is what are the main ideas. Can we use as few words as possible to write about what the writer's main ideas are, and we're really focusing on differences. So what are the differences, not similarities? Okay, we need to find clear differences. So an example of a clear difference is big and small, okay, or light and dark. Okay, so it has to be clear. So between Aberfan and London, this question is worth 8 marks. So you should spend time which is between 8 to 10 minutes. Okay, so the more you practice, the better you get at this. So if we go on to think about how to structure this question, we can look at CEI, compare evidence and infer. So what we need to do is structure this question so that the first sentence is going to have a comparison. So what is the main comparison? What's the main difference between the two locations in both texts? Then we provide the evidence, and then we provide an inference. So if we quickly talk about the two locations now, I'm just looking at a simple difference, and I want to develop this idea so that I can say something interesting about it. So what's really clear about Aberfan is it's a smaller place in the world compared to London. It's much more unheard of. Okay, it's much more unknown. Whereas London, okay, is obviously something that's quite bigger. It's more famous. It's more iconic. So you've got that clear difference there. And if we look at the evidence, we could right from the first paragraph, it says few people had ever heard of Aberfan until disaster struck it. And in source B, if we look at the second paragraph, London is described as a metropolis. Okay, so there's the two evidence. What can we say about it that's interesting then? Well, what we can say is the reason why Aberfan is headline news, or if not headline news, one of the main stories during this time in this newspaper is that of the severity of the disaster, okay, which killed 100 or so children and really destroyed the village that was below the hills there. Now in source B, we know that London is the reason why this is really important is because London is the capital city of the UK. It's much more famous, and even though the earthquake and it's described even there as being minor. Okay, nothing really substantial has happened, although there might be a few cracks that are appearing in certain structures and so on. The reason why this is, has come to attention is because it's in London. So that's what I'm going to say. Now, if I turn to the model paragraph, so all I'm doing here is looking at, I'm going to compare, give evidence, and then give an inference. So Aberfan or Aberfan is a smaller unknown location, whereas London is a larger and more famous destination. Clear difference. Okay. Next thing we give is the evidence. Okay, and so we'll say the writer says that few people heard of Aberfan until the disaster struck it, while in Source B, London is described as a metropolis. So here I'm just giving evidence, trying to embed the evidence as well. Now remember, this question is not about language analysis. It's more about your understanding. What do you understand by it? Can you find main differences in the writer's ideas? So the next thing that we do, the final thing, is give an inference, which is the disaster in Aberfan is known because of how serious and destructive the natural disaster was, while the earthquake in Source B is noteworthy because it happened in London, even though it was less destructive. So here you've got clear difference, evidence, and an interesting inference. Okay, now I'd like you to try and find 2 or 3 other clear difference or ideas about the two texts and have a go yourself.